15 with a capital G. Gertrude with a capital G, 215. I think that's what it is. If that doesn't work, I don't know what it is down here. Yeah. Hello, please come take your seats. I have on my sheet here, good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi, Neil. It's nice. It's a room full of people I know, but I'll introduce myself anyway for our live stream. And of course, as you all know, this is recorded and we put them on YouTube. So everyone can see them. Our students, the potential students, really love to see these presentations because we can talk about Atlantic University all day. It's really our graduates and our presenters that speak more to the heart of our incoming students and potential students than we do. So I'm Rachel Alvarez, Associate Vice President of Enrollment at Atlantic University. And thank you all for coming. We have board members and faculty and volunteers and a student. And it's just so nice to see everyone come here today. And someone drove in from Florida. She's like, I just got here just to come in today from Florida. And I'm just so glad we gathered today and the people that are on our live stream to really witness one of the most difficult and joyous projects that our students complete at the university. Not everyone has to do these. It's really the student elects to. They could just take 2 more classes. So the ones that go through this culminating project really have a love for the material and want to express something about themselves to the world. Not that the ones who take 2 extra classes do, but I just think there's something more about these students who do this culminating project. There's something that can't be held inside. And I'm looking to the side for people on live stream. We have Anne Hague, our presenter, sitting to the side. So before we start, cell phones are off or silenced, please. I was going to say beepers, but I don't know. Does anyone have a pager anymore? So I'd like to take a moment of silence before we get started. So if you would close your eyes, maybe really planting both feet on the floor and feeling very grounded in your meditation posture. And with the eyes closed, feeling the breath come in and out through the nose, beginning to feel the body relax. And bringing up positive energy, projecting it out to our speaker today. Offering love and gratitude for her being here. And excitement for being finished with this very long project. Mother, Father, God, we thank you for your presence with us today and for supporting everyone, especially our wonderful presenter. In love and light we pray. Amen. Thank you. So I know most of you have been to a convocation before. So really what we do is we allow this wonderful speaker to come up here and talk. We actually have Jules Maloney. She recorded her introduction from that that beautiful background in Sedona. So we can be jealous of that gorgeous place that she lives. So Anne will present, and when we're done, the faculty can ask a few questions. The rest of the audience can ask a few questions. Remember, it's not a defense. This isn't a thesis. It's really a culmination of everything she's learned. So you can ask a difficult question if you like, but remember, it's not a defense. And after Anne has finished, we'll ask our questions. I'd like to take some pictures so we can put them on our social media and website. And then we have a cake and coffee, and I hope we can just gather for a few minutes and congratulate Anne on a job well done. And of course, you all know I have a note where the bathrooms are, but I don't think I need to tell anybody the housekeeping of what's going on. So if Kevin, if you would be so kind as to bring up Jules's introduction, please. Oh, she's already there. So we'll have Jules introduce Anne, and then we'll get started.
Hi, this is Jules Maloney, and I chaired Anne Hague's master's thesis, and I am so pleased and so proud to introduce you to Anne Hague and the work that she did for her culminating research project exploring Eastern cultures and Western medicine and science to find the bridge for ultimate health, connecting through breath. Anne is an amazing soul, an amazing being, as you will soon see. And I know her from taking the Creating a Meaningful Life course with me and becoming a teacher of meditation, both of which became major pieces and starting points for her research, which was vast for this project. She not only researched a great deal of material, she also interviewed people, went to conferences, and did the work herself as well. She was bringing together many threads, many puzzle pieces to find the ultimate empowerment for each person's health and well-being. And she gives it the name the Contemplative Sciences, which I think is a wonderful way to describe what ultimately became the bridge for her between Eastern and Western medicine. And you'll see, it's an incredible piece of work. And I'm so excited for everyone to be able to hear about this. It is really a contribution to the thinking as we go forward into this new age and what we are finding out in the neurosciences, neuroplasticity, the biology of belief, the effect of meditation and mindfulness on our health and well-being, and as well as our self-discovery and spiritual enlightenment. And so she has much to share, I'm sure. The research for this project had a very wide scope, and she was able to bring it all together and continues to refine it. I've just read her final essay for AU, and there she distills it even more, which is what I have a feeling you will be hearing about today. So I am so proud and pleased to introduce Anne Hague to you.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Jules was an incredible lady and an incredible mentor, and that's what I have found with each course that I took here at AU, and that was one of the things that I found. Each course that I took, I thought, oh my gosh, this is the absolute best, and until I took the next one, and just incredible. So here's what we're going to talk about today. Woohoo! Let me just stop for a second. I'm here. It's been a lot of things that got me here, and we'll talk about some of those, but wow, I have to reflect on that personally and reflect on the number of people that have been there for me through this and express that gratitude. So today we are going to be talking about Eastern practices and Western sciences, finding the connection for health, connecting through breath. You'll see some more of these pictures, but this picture was taken in Glacier National Park. That's Lake Crosley. My daughter and I went backpacking there 2 years ago, and just incredible. So we've done our breathing, and we're centered and ready and bringing up our energy, and let's get going. It's my abstract. Talking about research findings in the 21st century, have really demonstrated that there is a huge gap in between Western medicine and alternative. And that's something that I experience almost every day working in the healthcare industry, and we'll see that. So you can read that. And let me tell you a little bit about who I am and what are my stories. So you can see the nurse right there. 1978, June 23rd, 1978, graduated from Richmond Memorial School of Nursing. And that young girl there had very little clue about life. I had known I wanted to be a nurse from an early age and just didn't know anything else. That was sort of what you went into. And I look back now, if I knew then what I know now, wow, the different things that would be going on. But one of the things that I like to share with this is that stories, because that was one of the experiences, one of the exercises in one of the classes, was to first write a story of a difficult thing in my past life. And so I wrote out, my mother had had depression as I was growing up. She had a very difficult time with depression. Every 6 months, almost like clockwork, she would go to bed for 4 to 6 weeks. And I would joke and say, not joke, but just for comic relief for myself, say that, well, if with medicine, she'll be better in 4 to 6 weeks. Without medicine, she'll be better in a month to a month and a half. So that was the story that I pretty much had, and that was how I saw myself. That was my story that I ingrained in my head of being a child of a mother with depression. Knowing that I would be bound for depression because it, in those days, that was in the 70s and 80s, that in that time period, depression is hereditary, and so that became ingrained too. And the good news is that isn't true, and we'll talk more about that. But with that, so then the next part of this exercise was to write my story as a fairy tale. So I said, well, okay. So I put on my creative cap, which I didn't at that time have too many creative caps, but I found them. And in fact, I've learned through one of the classes at AU here that I can draw, because in 5th grade I was told I couldn't draw, that my artwork wasn't an A, didn't deserve an A, that I wasn't creative. So I remember that until now. I know through AU that I can, and I've done some cool artwork. But so with the classes and the different things so with writing that fairy tale, I looked at it and I thought, oh my gosh, these are both pretty much stories that I can tell. And that was really another aha moment for me of looking with that in life. So my daughter is the light of my life. Truly a joy. She has been an inspiration to me in so many ways. The times that I did experience depression, it was of having my daughter in my life, and knowing that the love that I have for her, that I had to be a good role model, and I had to pull myself together. So that was one of the things that I do credit with getting on this path to learning more about that. But that was taken at Disney. She talked me into doing some half marathons. I was not a runner. And again, you tell yourself, I can't run, I can't do this. Well, guess what? You're right. But once you say, I'm going to, you end up there. And so I look at those 3 pictures. The picture on the end was of me in Nepal. I had gone there. It was, in fact, a year ago today that picture was taken. I was in Nepal it was then the first anniversary of their earthquake, and we were doing some volunteer work there. And just where I have come in those from the 1978 to the 2016, and to today, 2017, just being here and the transitions that I've been through. So today I'd like to present a fun and intriguing presentation sharing ideas to inspire. When Pigs Fly. One of the things that I'd like to share first with you is the little coin exercise. So what I'd like for you to do is, I just want to see how well you can follow instructions and do different things. So what I would like for you to do is to make the circles, You can do it either with one hand or two hands. Either way is fine. When I worked in nursing, and I still do, but when I was in infection control, I would always say I want 0 infections, so everybody knew me as the 0. But what I'd like for you to do now with that, and when you think you know how to solve this coin, raise your hand. What I'd like for you to do is to poke your head through that hole. Raise your hand when you know the answer. I'd like for you to poke your head through that hole. We have one hand raised. What's wrong with the rest of the group? James, can you poke your head through that hole? And again, sure, yeah, no. We have one person out of the group that can do that, and he will demonstrate for us. He poked his head through that hole. Ba-dump. But isn't that how life is sometimes, that we think we know what somebody is asking us for, and we think we know what we're supposed to be doing, and we're totally on a different thought path? And how to pull many of those things together is some of the things we'd like to talk about. So as I was searching for my topic, I had, when I first started at AU, I knew I wanted to do a cumulative project. I knew I wanted to do some research. I knew I wanted to find some different things. And so as I got on the road, one of the hardest decisions you'll ever face in life is choosing whether to walk away or to try harder. There were a couple of times, not many, but there were a couple of times that I said, as I was writing and getting pages and my computer would crash or I'd lose something on the computer, that I'd say, why didn't I just take the 2 classes? No, this really has been an incredible journey for me. The picture here is me in San Diego. Well, you'll see why I went to San Diego in a few moments. And that is one of the America ships, the Stars and Stripes, there that is docked in San Diego. So one of my first things in September of 2016, I attended Yogaville. Yogaville is in Buckingham, Virginia, an incredible venue, a delightful ashram, and they had a meditation weekend retreat, and that's what I went for, and that started my process. And so I knew I wanted to do something with meditation for my project, but what, I wasn't sure. In my neighborhood of Charlottesville, there are many delightful resources. I work for University of Virginia, and at University of Virginia, there is the Contemplative Sciences Center of University of Virginia. That's been in effect since about 2001. They started that, and it's continued to grow, and each year grows a little bit bigger. So I thought, oh my gosh, these things are in universities in the healthcare setting. I went and spoke with them, found out some of the things they're doing for students. They teach yoga, they teach Tai Chi, they teach meditation classes. They have a lot of resources in an incredible area. And in the School of Nursing, they have the Compassionate Care Initiative. The Compassionate Care Initiative, again, also does much of the meditation, mindfulness meditation, yoga, and many of the things. So I was very amazed to find, and they have a resilience room that they teach people more about resilience. And that's becoming a big buzzword in the healthcare. It's always been a problem. Resilience and compassion. Can you teach compassion? And we're finding that indeed compassion can be taught. It's not something that you can learn some of those skills and working with that. And these are some of the things that are just tremendous programs that they have. Dr. Dori Fontaine is the Dean of Nursing at UVA, and she is actually the one that started and brought compassionate care to University of Virginia and for nursing. She had attended a workshop in 2006, and then just decided that this is something we have to have in healthcare. Fortunately, she did. Dr. Tim Cunningham is the assistant director of that program now, also a nurse, and doing some incredible things for nursing, for the community, for healthcare. So as I talked to both the contemplative care science people there at UVA and also the compassionate care, the name Mind Life Institute kept coming up. And I had not heard, I wasn't familiar with Mind Life Institute. So, of course, when I got home, I had to Google and find out what Mind and Life is. Well, guess where their home office is? Charlottesville, Virginia. We're talking an incredible international institute that's based right there that I have access to, some incredible people. The Mind and Life Institute in the late 1999 era, two gentlemen that were working with mindfulness thought that it would be wonderful to start bridging some things with contemplative sciences and with healthcare. And one of the gentlemen went and spoke with the Dalai Lama, which was not easy to do, but he did. He was at the PhD level, so he had some things to talk about. And the Dalai Lama has said that if he hadn't been a monk, he would have been an engineer. So he has a great love for the contemplative sciences. And that's really how the Mind and Life Institute came to be, that they spoke with him and said, you know, we'd really like to get together and have talk sessions and start finding out how the two can come together. So one of the things they also, when I was talking to them, is that I found out in October that there's a Mind and Life Institute, the International Symposium for Contemplative Studies. In 2016, it was held in San Diego, California. It was held November 10th through 13th, and the date was about November the 2nd when I found out. As I went on the website, I found out that they have scholarships for students. And I thought, I'm a student. But this was like November 2nd, and I thought, well, you know, probably don't have any scholarships left. But if I don't apply, I'll never know. So went ahead and submitted the application, and that afternoon got an email saying congratulations. So then all of the ducks fell in the row. The universe made arrangements helped me make arrangements for the plane fare, the hotel, the rental car, everything came together, and I was able to attend that. And this is one of the pictures I took at the symposium. The keynote speakers were Dr. Richard Davidson from University of Wisconsin, and Matthew Ricard, who has lived in the Himalayas for much of his life and is also at a PhD level. One of the things that amazed me, and it was when I first got to the symposium, one of the things that amazed me was I had no idea what I'd be encountering. I didn't know how many people would be there, what the venue. There were 2,800 people, 2,792 people attending that conference, and that just blew me away. Most of those people were in the academia setting and had done much research. It was a great awakening for me to realize the research is being done. And this is one of Matthew Ricard's statements. Contemplative sciences and neuroscience research demonstrate if you meditate for 15 minutes every day for a month, the function and structure of your brain and immune system change. Now, I knew there had been some studies, but to see a scientist and to see this in a scientific study was very intriguing to me. One of the most intriguing things for me was finding out the number of research papers that are being written. In 1980, there were none. 81, 82, somebody wrote. Now, these are not just articles on mindfulness. These are research papers that have been written and accepted. And all the way over in 2016, you can see that just said to me, wow. Knowing that I wanted to do something on mindfulness, not sure where to go, my big question became, I work as a nurse at UVA, and when I'm in the healthcare setting, I don't see it transition over. So my big question was, why hasn't this gotten into mainstream healthcare more? It's certainly beginning to seep in, but what's the holdup and what else do we need to do? As I started doing some of my research, one of the things that I found, and this is some of it is tongue-in-cheek, but some of it is also very true. And as I was reading Candace Pert and Dr. Candace Pert, who's no longer with us, and Dr. Dean Radin, also all said that research is more competitive than probably most sports, that it's very cutthroat in many ways, getting published and some of those things. It was very disheartening to read, but that's the reality of it. What most things of change go through is that first you're going to be ridiculed, this first ridicule. Well, that is the craziest thing that I've ever heard. Similar to Galileo, when he was saying that the Earth is not flat, it's round. And we still have people today that say, no, the Earth is flat. But people before Galileo had been burned at the stake. And that's what has happened in many of the sciences. People were tortured, burned at the stake, ridiculed. It just wasn't a friendly environment to come out with a new idea that went against the grain. The opposition of you can't do it. And that was one of the things. Fortunately, Candace Pert, in the 70s, when she was doing her work of discovering the neuropeptide, the link with those, and where the synapse and the neuropeptide, really where in the brain center work, that there were people saying it's not there, it's not there, and she kept working until she found it. And she's had done some very incredible things. So finally, it boils down to people accept it, and we can move on. Talking about the difference between Western medicine and Eastern medicine, pretty much we know the huge differences. Western medicine is based on science. It's very cut and dry. A lot of times, and that's the unfortunate thing in the healthcare setting, that I watch patients being taken care of as though maybe they're, I've seen maybe sometimes people take better care of a mechanic caring for a car than sometimes, because we lose that idea that it's a person there, it's a body. It's not just the body, it's the body, mind, and spirit. Western medicine uses the drugs, Eastern more of the herbal medicines, and more of the natural. And when we're talking about the cost, Western medicine, here we're spending 17.5% in the United States of our gross national product on healthcare, which is an astounding figure. And as I was looking into some of the other research, of finding out how much is spent on some of the different medications, pharmaceuticals, and different things, it was very alarming. This is one of my last academic type slides, and then we'll get into some of the other meat of it. But this is just talking about the difference between Western and traditional, where Western is very academic and on literate transmission, and Western sciences isolates its objects from their vital context by putting them in its simplest and controllable experimental things. With Western sciences, they want to be able to reproduce that study. As when you're talking some of the psi-type studies, paranormal, sometimes you're not going to be able to reproduce those studies, and because things change. So my question then really came into, how did our healthcare system get to where it is now? And I intentionally want this to be a busy slide because there was so much that went into how we got there. This gentleman here is Dr. Morris Fishbein. Dr. Fishbein was pretty much the head of the American Medical Association for 25 years. Dr. Simons was the first heading, and then he had hired Dr. Fishbein, and when Dr. Simons was fired, Dr. Fishbein took over the role. And we'll see some of the things that Dr. Fishbein did in just a moment. But one of the things that he did was that in the JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association, one of the ways they made their money was of having the cigarette companies advertise in there and of promoting their cigarettes. one of the things, and this particular slide here talking about statins, I'll just briefly, I can't, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the statins. So many people are on them. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Are there other things, other ways? Absolutely. Are there side effects? Absolutely. We see those TV commercials on about the pharmaceutical products, and it's a billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar industry. But that those things were accepted, and that Dr. Fishbein was, for that period of time when he was in office for the head of the American Medical Association, very well respected throughout the country. Just going to talk and go through some of these, what happened. And that's why, as I looked at the sciences, I think the first thing it talking about that it took 260 years before the British Navy learned that really just citrus is what is going to prevent the scurvy. And sometimes we can have an idea or a concept right in front of us, and if we don't recognize it, it just goes over our heads. Samuel Hahnemann was the first to use homeopathy in 1796. In 1839, 3 million Americans were using Samuel Thompson's brand of medicine. Samuel Thompson had created his medicine based on the American Indians, the Native American medicine, and had learned quite a bit from them. He was forced to stop making his medications and to selling that because the one current concern they have is that he was not charging people for it, and physicians were being in competition. So competition was alive and well at that time also. So there was in 1899 that George Simons comes into the American Medical Association. 1910, the Flexner report came in. And this is one of the areas that I saw a lot of the changes of how medicine really changed. What the Flexner report said was that schools of medicine had to meet certain standards, which is all good and fine. But if you were homeopathic, chiropractic, any of the other traditionals, you couldn't be a part of the school of medicine, and they eliminated them. So the schools of medicine went down dramatically, the numbers. And part of the concern with the American Medical Association was that there were too many doctors, there were going to be too many doctors, and they wouldn't be able to make their money. (1931), Royal Rife. I had not heard of Royal Rife before doing this, and so that was why it was intriguing to me of finding out who Dr. Raymond Royal Rife was and what he had done. And that was the start of my seeing the number of people that developed a lot of incredible alternative treatments that were banned practically from medicine, were jailed, were harassed. And one of the things that Dr. Simons said was that if anyone is using, Dr. Rife had an incredible telescope, which was about 80 years, we'll see it there, about 80 years ahead of his time. And he also developed, very painstakingly, a therapy using electricity to cure diseases, and particularly cancer cells. And it was very successful, and it had none of the deleterious side effects that we see with the chemotherapies and the radiations that are in vogue today. Chemotherapy and radiation have been around since chemotherapy started in the 50s, radiation started in the 30s and 40s, and they are big money makers. It's uncomfortable to say that, being in the industry, but that is the reality of it. There are many side effects, and there are many other alternative things. And again, the list here and the time frames, people that have have created new things. The Dr. Hoxie, Dr. Max Gerson, all of those people that have created things and have been banned from using them in the United States or having people to use them. Interesting, 1947, the Aluminum Association, which was the leading fluoride polluter of that time, they had done some studies, and their studies said, oh, well, fluoride is going to reduce cavities. They didn't tell us that fluoride models your teeth, but it reduces cavities. And also it reduces bone density. So we have, in our culture, have fluoride in our water. And you go to your dentist and they're going to say, do you want a fluoride treatment? There are many side effects with that, and the therapy is not effective. How do we learn to ask those questions really began to be what my information, where my thinking was going? How did this happen? Fitzgerald report in 1953, he came out and he realized, he found that the Krebsoian and the Hoxies, Rife, all of those people had great treatments, but they were blocked. Dr. Fishbein had a war on quackery, and he had 300,000 people on that list. And he would write in different journals, the newspapers, and he had a lot of people that were reading that. So he was and became what the American public saw as the person, the go-to, the expert. It was finally in 1954 that the Journal of American Medicine finally said, okay, we can't keep running these ads on tobacco. People started coming out and saying, no, they're really, 96.2% of their patients that had lung cancer were smokers. They said, we've got to stop this. And I can remember in 1983, I was in nursing school, and I can remember hearing about Laetrile. And Laetrile, so it was interesting when I saw that again, because Laetrile is similar to more of a vitamin, a very natural alternative. But in my mind, from hearing the publicity, I had a negative concept of it. But indeed, it is one of the other medications that has been proven to help and to eliminate cancer. But he was sent to jail in 1983, and several others. And that was sort of how the story went through that period of time until we're here looking at one of the main people that I see of having who separated us in the 1700s, René Descartes. Mind and body are separate. He basically went to the church and said, no, mind and body, because at that time, they couldn't do autopsies, or they didn't want the body to be cut, any autopsies done, and things like that. And Descartes wanted, to do some research. So he went to the church and said, look, mind is totally separate from the body. It's not, and so that's where that, one of the areas it started. It had also been some other areas earlier in history, but that's the main key thing. Fortunately, in the 21st century, we now know that it's proven that mind and body are one. And as Candace Pert eloquently says in her quote there, that they are one, and we need to start treating them as one. And in a lot of her research, that's what we have found. And what I saw is that when you look at the neuropeptides, when you look at the chemicals that stress, that hormones, we have known that stress affects how the body performs, what happens with it. But now we really have a lot of good science information with that. So that took me to doing some work and thinking on how do cultural beliefs versus science apply to us, and looking with that. So those that still think that the earth is flat, one of their thoughts is that if you have a fish and if you drop it, if the earth was round and moving, then that fish would land on the red dot. And in their experiment, the fish doesn't land there, so they say the Earth is flat and still. Andrew Jackson believed that it was also flat. Again, this is an example of how do we get things in our mind and how do we continue to perpetuate those things throughout history and throughout our own personal lives. And what other things do we believe that we are very strongly instilled that you have to see a physician for any medical care. If I were to give you any medical ideas, thoughts, I could be thrown in jail because I am not a physician. And that's where we have gotten to that point. So how do we get out of that? There's this significant paradigm shift. Illness in our body is a way of telling us about problems. And that is what I think the medical system has not addressed, is that, sure, they can treat those things, but just by treating those things, what caused them? If we listen and go inside and ask our body, what caused those things? What other ways can I eliminate that? And as we see, the body itself has an incredible ability to heal. It's greater than anyone has permitted. From the teachings of Buddha, from the teachings of Christ throughout millennia, people have known and have done those things of how to heal and how to reach those without spending multi-billions of dollars. So I'm going to pause now and just do a little how our perception, how we perceive things. So looking at that, and what do you see? By shifting perspective, you might see an old woman or a young woman. And indeed, it's interesting each time I see this picture, where my eyes go to, and then have to search for the other woman. But indeed, there is an old woman and a young woman in that. So as we're shifting, the shift comes also as we're looking at what the research I found on the Aquarian Age. And fortunately, we have, I believe, have entered into the Aquarian Age. It's dominated by networks of information. Key phrase is be to be, just be. The age of information where nothing is secret and all information is available at your fingertips. And that was one of the most amazing things for me doing this research, is what was at my fingertips. I could go on the computer, I could see a bit of information, Google it, find an author, go to Amazon with one click. I could have that book downloaded to my Kindle in seconds. So we really are at that. Where the Piscean Age was organized in a vertical up and down structure of hierarchies, the Aquarian Age is more organized in a horizontal network, opening the world up to a true equality. And I think that's one of the things that we have to embrace. There's so many things that are concerning to us. But to be able to embrace that, one of the things that I really like is this quote from Tolle in his book, Stillness Speaks. At the present time, the dysfunction of the old consciousness and the arising of the new one are both accelerating. Paradoxically, things are getting worse and better at the same time, although the worse is more apparent because it makes so much noise. And I think that's the important thing to consider, is what are we placing our focus on when we're looking at the news, when we're looking at the difficult things in life. Where do we place our focus? And if we're placing, and now for me, the exciting thing was once I would place my focus on one element, it was like I kept seeing things over and over again, and more information expanding to that. And that's one of the things through the Atlantic University programs that I have learned and am learning more of how to integrate that into my daily life, how to see the best of things, how to be the best of things, and what my thoughts encompassed, and how the mindfulness meditation can slow me down and get me centered, and letting those thoughts just be very calming. Bruce Lipton had done quite a bit of work with the epigenetics, and Dr. Dean Radin had done quite a bit with neuroplasticity and a number of other things. Dr. Joe Dispenza has written a lot in his books about neuroplasticity, but important of knowing that as we create those new neural pathways, we can change and do different things. We can be different. As we look at those new experiences, we see the world with different insights. And again, this one is my daughter, and we're at Lake Elizabeth there. So Bruce Lipton, one of the areas that I have come to appreciate how mindfulness helps quite a bit is of looking at the conscious mind controls our brain only 5% of the time, and the subconscious mind the other part of the time. So when we're in our subconscious mind, we're doing that automatic thinking. When we're driving, when we're doing habitual tasks, it's sort of good to have that subconscious mind doing it because we don't have to think about it. But we're only thinking about things 5% of the time, of really concentrating. And that is one of the things, again, that mindfulness meditation can help with, of helping us to really be conscious of our thoughts and not just on automatic pilot. When we walk by somebody and you say, "Hi, how are you?" and you don't, it's almost like the subconscious interaction, and how to really get in and delve in and speak with ourselves, speak with others, and speak with our world. You have 70,000 thoughts per day, and most of those thoughts are the same 70,000 a day if you're in your subconscious mind. So you can boost your brain power with meditation. It's proven to increase IQ, relieve stress, and promote higher learning levels. Some of the good things. And this is one of the other areas that I like to talk about just briefly, that with the cholesterol medications, the statins, our brain and our bodies do need a certain amount. And to look at where they have set their limits of where cholesterol should be and is, I disagree with those, but that's just my opinion. So Joe Dispenza talks about, again, why change is difficult. We know change is difficult. How do we do those things? And again, it brings it back to the mindfulness meditation. Through mindfully knowing our conscious thoughts, it makes it much easier for us to change. And from Thich Nhat Hanh, with mindfulness, you can establish yourself in the present in order to touch the wonders of life that are available in that moment. I went and saw a river dance on Tuesday night in Charlottesville, so I had to add this in because it really made me realize what Bruce Lipton talks about in, and I'm sorry, I just realized that. It is Joe Dispenza that talks about that in You Are the Placebo. So this is actually a slide from Joe Dispenza. But the survival emotions versus creative emotions, and what intrigued me the most about watching river dance was that everybody was on beat, and that's how our body is. When our molecules are all working, they're working well in beat, and everything is in rhythm and sequence. And watching the drummer there in river dance, he was just all over his little stage area, but he was on beat. And that's what our bodies do. Except if I were to be up there dancing with him, I wouldn't be in rhythm with him. And it would be a different experience because I don't have that rhythm. I don't have that creative skill developed yet. Doesn't mean I can't, but I haven't developed it yet. So looking with that of when we have more energy and matter through practice, as the waves of energy, when you change your energy, you lift matter to a new mind, and your body vibrates at a faster frequency. So that faster frequency gives us the energy, the creativity. And it's particularly with this that when you talk about, and in the 70s I had heard, an intriguing quote, and it was that 99% of stress, 99% of accidents and illness are created by stress. And in the 70s I thought that was just ridiculous. But now I know that that's true. And this is a lot of why that happens, because as we're stressed, our chemicals, our electrical, how we're functioning, our cells are working at a different level. A fun slide, just something but mind over matter is quite a fun area. How we can look at the paranormal, because science doesn't embrace the paranormal yet, and they are. And this is from Bruce Lipton. A miraculous healing awaits the planet once we accept our new responsibility to collectively tend to the garden rather than fight over the turf. In you, as in each human being, there is a dimension of consciousness far deeper than thought. So where do we go from here? We have choices in life and different decisions. And I strongly believe that mindfulness meditation is one of the things, and I'm excited in doing my research to find that it is in the school systems, it is going into many different arenas of life, and that will indeed be what I think will take us to a next generation, because where we are doesn't mean we have to stay there. And it was indeed, Bruce Lipton made, when he was doing his interview presentation at Stanford, he had a choice then. He had two slides. It was interesting to hear him talk about that. He had two slides. One was the conservative, what mainstream science believes. The other was his sort of new discoveries, new findings, new thoughts of how mind and body are one. And he asked a friend, which one should I present? The friend said, go with the conservative, you want the job. Fortunately, he didn't, and it created quite a hubbub. I mean, they were yelling, screaming, he says, in the interview from the audience. And he thought, well, I guess I won't get that job. But that's indeed what Stanford wanted, fortunately. They wanted somebody that's going to say, hey, let's not be mainstream. And he has done quite a bit of research with that. So, as we breathe and move forward, I'd like to just express the many thanks to the people that have helped, especially Jules, Dr. Jules Maloney, and Dr. Douglas Richard for chairing this project for me, and a number of other people that have just truly been there and an inspiration to me. A big thank you to Atlantic University for having this university, the staff, and the professors and teachers have been incredible. It has been an incredible journey for me, and I thank you for your time. Questions?
Hi, Anne.
Hi.
A wonderful presentation. I was wondering, I can certainly tell that you've tied this all together. Can you maybe think of a few standout elements that really target to what you've seen, what you're seeing, that is so significant about mindfulness meditation affecting health and well-being? You know, what are some of those takeaways that you saw as you were reading through the material and perhaps practicing on your own and having conversations with others?
Yes. Mindfulness meditation, truly I have seen, and that's why I was so excited when I saw in the literature that research is now proving that, of how we're centered, stress, blood pressure, heart rate, they come into better being. It's reading with the kids. One of the schools in Baltimore is doing instead of doing time out, they're doing the meditation. Take your meditation, and it's caught on very well. So that's, I think, the intriguing thing for me, particularly for kids. I know Wayne Dyer had said a number of years ago, if all of our 5-year-olds could do 5 minutes of mindfulness meditation every day, we'd have a different world in 10 years. And that is truly true, because and when I had gone to Yogaville, I had stopped by and had coffee, and the lady there, her son, had graduated from the nearby high school, and they had lived there in Yogaville. And she said, the last 3 graduates from the high school have come from this area, from Yogaville, and they have all been the number 1 in their class. And I said, what do you think why did that? She said, no, they're not smarter than anyone else, but they have learned how to be conscious in their thoughts. They have learned how to do the studies. They didn't study any harder. They weren't she said, my son's definitely not smarter than any of them, but he learned how to be conscious of his work. And I think that's what I see with mindfulness meditation, of how we can be conscious of what we eat, how we live, instead of working on that subconscious of stopping by McDonald's and picking up a quarter pounder, which,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Anne. I actually have 2 things that I'd like you to elaborate on. The first one is you spent a lot of time researching mindfulness meditation. I was wondering if your research investigated any other forms of meditation and how that relates to what you're finding.
Great, yes, that's a good question, and thank you for letting me bring that in. Tai Chi was one of the other things that I had done, and the yoga in particular were the 3 areas that I looked at. And the good news is I found also is that there is research finding with those. Tai Chi just is the exercise in mindfulness meditation, letting the body be physical with it, the movement, being conscious as your movement. So the literature is very strong for those areas. I had also looked at some of the Ayurvedic medicines in Ayurveda, and again, finding just what they're teaching with the nutrition, the breath, and all in the Ayurvedics were incredible. One of the things that I did find with Ayurveda is I was reading the research, I can't remember names sometimes, but it'll come to me. Who's the big Ayurvedic? I'll move back with that. But what he had said was, the incredible wonders of it. Deepak Chopra.
Deepak Chopra.
Thank you. So then I read some of the government, the National Institute of Health, what they said about it. And National Institute of Health does have a contemplative venue also, which is exciting that the government is funding some of that. But they also expressed much caution that, they said the Chinese medicines can have mercury in them. They failed to mention that our vaccines have had mercury in them, and in many of our other medications, but it's just that slant, and I think that was the one thing that I learned as I was doing the research. Who was funding it, and what was their focus?
You brought up a lot of the difficulties with Western medicine, with the funding and the AMA, and of course, when the government got involved with paying for this, it just ballooned. But I'm wondering if you look at this as a paradox and you are balancing the polarities, what you find Western medicine can contribute.
Absolutely. And if Western medicine could open up, I believe, to merging, and instead of being Western and Eastern versus of working together, because certainly Western medicine, in 1967, it was Dr. Christian Bernard that had done the first open heart, heart transplants. When somebody needs a heart like that in a young person, that was tremendously impressive and made a significant difference. When I watch emergency medicines, when I see the auto accident patients come in and then walk out, and that's been the intrigue for me working in healthcare. The things that I watch physicians do. I work right now in interventional radiology, and it's a cutting edge technology, and it truly makes a difference in their lives. The frustrating thing in healthcare is that a majority of our patients are still smoking. A majority of our patients aren't doing any of their dietary changes, aren't taking the responsibility. And I think that's what I see as one of the biggest things, that medicine usurped the authority of who's going to take care of our health, of my health. And it's time for Americans to take that responsibility back. We've become very docile in what we do with that, and to say, no, I have a voice. So people are speaking up quite a bit with that. And
So would it be fair to say that you're seeing most of what Western medicine contributes in the form of acute as opposed to chronic illnesses?
yes, but also in the 80s, I had worked for 10 years in cardiac and pulmonary rehab, and that process why are cardiac and pulmonary rehab programs not in vogue now? Because they don't make money. And that's the bottom line. Those patients made incredible differences in terms of they exercise. Western medicine can teach us to exercise. Western medicine can teach us the proper nutrition, can look at what our blood counts are and different things, because a lot of those do have a huge impact. But for the cardiac and the pulmonary rehab, there were patients, especially our pulmonary patients, they would come in and they'd see patients walking on the treadmill, and they'd say, I won't be able to do that. And I'd say, yeah, you will, give it time, just stay with it. And in 3 months, it changed their lifestyles. They were able to go out with friends again, cook meals, and do things that they hadn't been able to do because of those. So there is tremendous impact with that, but how to get rid of the bureaucracy is one of the key questions that I think I still have, and that's the key question that we have in many different arenas in our world. And that's why I think I was excited. For a period of time, I went through some sort of just a really, and I had to catch myself and go back to doing the meditation, because I was getting very angry of when I would see those things, and how could, and then I had to calm myself down and reflect. It is as it's supposed to be in this world. All is as it's supposed to be. I'm not going to agree with it, and I can make changes. But to get angry, that anger was not the right emotion. To get active is the right emotion, and that's what I think Atlantic University has helped me a lot with, learning some of those differences.
Yeah, Anne, thank you. I really enjoyed this, and I think it's very pertinent today of what we're dealing with about not only beyond medicine to health and welfare, what you're seeing here, and that going to there. And I find it interesting because, like you said, kind of that East meets West, that you presented that both, have parts that are important, and trying to find that balance and the struggle, the history of the AMA, of Fishburne, and accusations of quackery, of things they just don't care for, and perception. And what I was thinking is that interesting, because you might say both sides today accept modern medicine or mainstream and alternative medicine as terms, and both sides accept that. Could that perhaps actually need to be changed, because we're hearing alternative facts as terminology, which means it's not medicine, or it's not the proper, that even, I think this is important, but one of the first steps might be to use a different term rather than Western and alternative medicine, maybe Western and cooperative medicine, something to take that out and to bring it in together, because that is the perceptions. I mean, your thoughts on what you're finding in that field yourself.
Exactly. That is very point on. One of the things I found interesting is I was also researching some with the traditional Chinese medicine, that in China, much of their medicine now is Western medicine, for those that have the money to afford it. When I was in Nepal, much of their medicine is still traditional medicine because they don't have the money for it. Here in this country, we have almost a carte blanche of health care, and how to be able to, as you said, that's the goal of how do we merge those so that we're not dividing and conquering, that we're working together. I see that with hospice. So often hospice has much more of the traditional caring. But one of the things that's happened, the reason I bring that up with hospice is because the term hospice, when somebody's going into hospice, oh, they're going to be dying soon. And that's not true with hospice. Hospice helps us. And that's one of the areas that I didn't touch on here, but it's very dear to my heart, that our our culture, we have come to believe that death is the enemy, and it is not. It's a part of life. It's much a part of life as birth. And I truly believe that as birth is a celebrated time, that death also, it's not the ending, it's the new beginning. And that was one of the things for me that helped me with some of that, is when here with one of the courses on past life regression, going through that. My background was very conservative Christian, and I had never really heard or talked much about past life regressions or reincarnation, and I had to come to grips with, gee, is that something I believe, or is or what? And that was and again, that's just occurred for me in the last 4 years, and I look at that. When I started the program, I was 56. I'll be 60 in June, and my goal had been to finish the program before I turned 60, so I made it. But I looked at that and I thought, well, gee, I'm old. No, I'm not. That's again another one of those memes. How to, so are you done now? No, I'm not. I've been in nursing 39 years now, and I'm looking forward to the next 39. And it's going to be in some incredible things, incredible ways, yeah.
I have a question for you. In the microphone.
I want to compliment you on a wonderful presentation. I was very energized by it. I was curious to know whether you have explored the opportunity to introduce contemplative practices in your work with your coworkers, with your management team, and how you might offer that as a benefit in your work environment. I read this really great book recently by Sheryl Sandberg called Option B, and it was very inspiring to me, and I thought of it as you were going through your process, and I thought that might be a bridge to what you so effectively could do. And thank you again.
Thank you.
I loved it.
Thank you. That's an incredible question, and I would love to get the name of that book from you, because, and that was the fun thing for me when I was in San Diego. I was able to meet other nurses that are trying some of the similar things that I'd like to see. And change in the healthcare particularly, I know that because that's the only thing that I know that change is difficult there, because that's what I've experienced. We don't, as nurses, we don't want to do anything different. This is the way we've always done it, and so I've found that I have to tread lightly, and finding resources like that is what makes the difference. And in fact, when I first started with that, I thought, well, I will do some of the meditation. I can teach mindfulness meditation, but it was almost like I was the peer, and it didn't come across. So then I got, and one of the resources, we have University of Virginia School of Nursing, and incredible people there. So we have them come over and do some of our lectures, and it's made a difference. So I find that it really has to go slow. Yeah, very insightful comment and question you have, yes.
And a wonderful presentation. Excellent, thank you. I think you're just going down the right path. I congratulate you for just the outstanding work that you've been doing, and a number of your highlights also hit me. And I remember standing at that same podium now 4 years ago, thinking that I was pretty well on top of it. You know, I had things pretty well sorted out, and now 4 years later, I realize that there's so much more to learn. And I, by the way, encourage you to go on in your graduate work, because it just gets more and more exciting out there.
Wow.
And there's so many breakthroughs in so many of these areas that you're touching on, and I can feel your enthusiasm, and I like your approach, so I certainly encourage you to do that. I remember a comment I read back when the turn of the century, and a really big study took place, and granted it was done by the American Health Association, but they had the statistics from 1990, 1900, excuse me, and 2000. And over that 100 years, how we have progressed in health and medicine. And they said the average age at 1900 was like 53, and now it's 80. And all of these benefits that have taken place over those 100 years, and what made that happen? And they looked at, were the physicians really better educated? Yes, and they attributed a certain amount of years or year to that, and they went through with the surgeons and the way we now do modern surgery and all of that, and they gave a few years to that. The bottom line was, and you hit on that, how now in the 21st century, how much access we have to our own information and our information about health and how it affects us. And you kept saying that you went back and found this, and how we heal ourselves with the information that we now know about good health and good eating and proper all these things that they attributed by far the largest change in our lifespans and in our good health now going into the 21st century is that we now, and even in 2000 was still the sort of the internet and the information was there, and now we know it's just getting more and more and more, and knowledge of both East and West, and so that we can go back now and find alternatives to our own health directions that we're going in. And I just encourage you to continue to go down that road, that path. I think that's really exciting. So good luck.
Great, thank you. I'd like to also add and address with that, one of the ideas of what I'd like to write and research next is, and my topic is going to be, saving man, killing mankind. And I think indeed that's a lot of what I have seen of when we're looking where our planet is now. When I'm looking at what antibiotics have made a significant impact. But now on the other side of that coin, with what antibiotics we're finding are really doing to the flora in our gut, they're destroying our health and the different things that those things destroy. But I also look it just amazes me in the hospital that what we waste in one day, what I see wasted in my little area that I work in one day, could practically would fill this room, because it's got to be sterile. It's got to be this. When I was in Nepal, I visited a cardiac cath lab, which I was amazed they had a cardiac cath lab. And I noticed that they had all these the wires and different things hanging on a rack. And in the States here, if you touch a wire wrong, you throw it away. Doesn't matter if it costs $2,000. You sterile. It's got to be sterile. There, they reuse their wires, and I was like, and I said, "Well, what's your infection rate?" We don't have a problem. And I think that's the one thing as I look at that, is it the meme? And I'm saying that in a few years we're going to say that it is not germs. I'm stepping on a limb here, so just hear me out on this one. Germs don't cause illness. Now and again, that's a huge thought. But what really causes it is when we let our bodies take on that, and that's where I'm going with that thought. When we can't resist, when we can't fight those off, there are germs everywhere. And how have we, through our antibiotics, how have we closed the door to what our body can do? Is one of the huge things. And again, for me, I see it going back to the meditation, to doing some of those therapies for ourselves that makes the difference, the natural remedies. Yeah, great comment. Thank you. Great.
Just one more question, I think. Just following off of what you mentioned about some incremental change. I recall hearing that dean of the nursing school at UVA talking about how they implemented either 30 or 60 seconds of compassion. And
the pause.
Yeah, maybe you could share what that is with the group. But on top of that, the question is, do you see other ways of infusing like incremental change? Like how could mindfulness, mindful living, like you described it as being conscious of where you are, your actions, your thoughts, your emotions, how we might have an incremental shift. How might, if there were nurses listening, or doctors, or anyone, how can we implement some sense of incremental change?
Exactly, yeah. That is incredible. Yeah. And it is at UVA that came, and I had just heard that young man do the lecture last week on pause and resiliency. And what his story is that he was working in the ER, and when in the ER, when you go from, and in healthcare, you go from one death, and that's really where you become numb to what's going on with other people, with the person's life. And it really, for mental sanity, for internal sanity, you have to develop that wall. And that's not the way that it should be. But he realized his patients were dying, that he would just go right on into the next, caring for the next patient, and carry with him that. And he instituted that of let's all gather together and just respect this person's life. Let's take a pause. And one of the things that he also talks about now is guerrilla meditation. And what he shares is with guerrilla warfare that you jump out and you get rid of whatever, and with guerrilla meditation, taking that 30 minutes, that 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and just pausing, and that breath, and that, I think for me, just finding out what that breath can do, what it can reset, how those neuropeptides, the chemicals that our body is an incredible pharmacopoeia. I didn't touch on, but I had done quite a bit of reading on the placebo effect, and it's just an amazing field. And it's not that our body creates those healing things for us, and just taking those pauses. And that's exactly what we need to be doing. In fact, after I had gone with a coworker to this gentleman's presentation, and as we were walking back, we were talking and I said, what can we be doing to help bring this? And we're and that's what one of the things that's up here is my manager, Annette Silver. She is phenomenal. She has allowed me, and she's been supportive of how I bring these things in, and just there, and the coworkers that I work with. So it's happening. It's learning that patience and sometimes when you're in the forest, you can't see the trees. It's like it's changing, but you can't see it. But you're exactly right, of starting small until it's really time to grow big. Because certainly that was my feeling when I went to the symposium there in San Diego. Oh my gosh, boom! It was big, it's huge. I thought it was just in a little small, and it's like, you know, so many, it was internationally represented, and the Dalai Lama has done incredible things with helping to bridge some of that, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you. Alrighty, thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for your time.
So I think James is, oh, go ahead. You did a great job, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We've talked on the phone a lot. The last couple weeks. So James is going to give some final remarks. You can step down, Anne. Okay. And then there's cake.
Well, thanks again, Anne. That was just wonderful. And I was just looking back. The first culminating projects that Atlantic University had were presented in 1989. I was just thinking about how many people have come through Atlantic University, stood up here in this very room or a room up on the hill, and shared what their passion has been of discovering something in the transpersonal realm that is going to affect them in their lives and the people around them in some area of industry or business or the medical field. And it's really nice to be reminded of that, that there is a legacy here, that you're continuing it. The first presentation of 2017, I know we'll have many more. And it's just really exciting. I also want to, just convey our collective understanding of the numerous hours of work that you've put into this. I know just to complete 12 courses is actually 1,620 hours. Plus, it looks like you did quite extensive extra work in order to pull together that CP, traveling quite a bit. So on behalf of all the faculty, the administrative staff, the president, and our board of trustees, well done. We're very proud of you. Let's have some cake.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.